Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another video for EVE Echoes. Now today's video is not going to contain any gameplay footage or any explosions or anything like that, so again you can treat this one as if it's a podcast. Twice in 1 week I've got one of these. It means we're getting a lot of exciting new updates and things going on. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the EVE Echoes Trello board. This is kind of like a roadmap that the developers lay out to showcase all the exciting new features that they're working on with hopeful release over the next couple of months. Now before we jump in, it's worth noting a couple of things. First of all, that if I tap on any of these cards, there are no descriptions here at all. So we are basing this purely on speculation, on what the developers have said in Q&A sessions, and maybe in certain cases how things work in EVE Online. And again, just because it works a certain way in EVE Online does not mean it will necessarily work that exact same way in EVE Echoes. I am a firm believer that Echoes should stand on its own, and that EVE Online can sort of give guidelines and guideposts, but Echoes does not need to follow that to the T. Secondarily, this of course is a roadmap. It's just an idea. It's not set in stone. If you see something happening in February, March or April or whatever, and it doesn't happen then, don't get angry with the developers. This is all subject to change. Games development, of course, is one of those real horrible things where anything can happen at any time. You may find that something you're working on just isn't working, there are bugs that just refuse to be squashed, and thus it needs to be pushed back. That is fairly common, so do take this all with a pinch of salt. Third and finally, this was sort of brought to my attention by Sovereign RPG. Now, if you're not already following Sovereign RPG, well, basically, if you're following me for EVE Echoes content, 100% you should also be following Sovereign. Essentially, head over to his channel, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. Sovereign is amazing for sort of alerting all of his followers when there is a big bug or dangerous things going on in the game. Like, for example, when the developers have made changes to rats that have made those rats far more powerful, or when there was that gate camp bug recently in LowSec, Sovereign will be shouting out about that kind of thing. Always has done. He's an excellent source of all the news and goings on in New Eden. So if you're playing the game, 100% I would get over there, subscribe, and put on those notifications so that you never miss out on any of those alerts. Now, of course, do hit like on this video and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And if you do want to go the extra mile to help support, we do have a Patreon and indeed a Redbubble merchandise store. Anyway, that said and done, finally, everything I'm saying here is my own personal opinion. It's 2021, I can't believe I still have to state that, but there we go. Let's jump right in. February 2021, Valentine's Day event, Guardians Gala. So, this is actually something that's happened in EVE Online since, I think, 2017 was the first Guardians Gala. This is a Valentine's Day event, and it's very similar to how the Crimson Harvest events in EVE Echoes were. Basically, you get these special anomalies that occasionally spawn. In EVE Online, they spawn in standard space, and there'll be VIP versions that spawn in wormhole space. Obviously, we don't have wormholes yet, and I don't take this to believe that, you know, we're going to get wormholes. I think this is just going to be like the Crimson Harvest, where we'll have sort of Tech 1 to Tech 7 and Tech 8 plus variants of these particular anomalies. Now, in EVE Online, when you jump into one of these, as you kill the ships there, those ships can be the ones that drop the special crates and skins and things like that. Whereas in EVE Echoes, with the Crimson Harvest, you kind of cleared out the waves and then you looted boxes at the end. So, I don't know if they're going to change that. It's interesting to see which way they could go there, whether they have it as crates at the end that you loot, or whether it is just the ability to loot individual ships as you go. I think both have pros and cons. Secondarily, I'm actually personally hoping we go back to the Crimson Harvest style of things here. Now, with the Crimson Harvest, they were public anomalies. Anyone could jump in, and if there was already someone in there, well, you could ultimately duel to the death over the possible, you know, rewards, etc. It was excellent for solo PvPers like myself, and I really missed that when they took that away in the Christmas event. In the Christmas event, everything was private encounters. You got those little scrolls, you activated them like mission encounters, and then you jumped into your own instance little version. I am hoping that the Valentine's Day version, again, does allow for PvP. I know that's a controversial opinion, not everyone likes PvP, but certainly it gives me more chance to put some cool PvP videos up for you guys to watch, so, well, yeah, there's that. Now, the second part here in February is the insurance system. Now, this is something that the developers have hinted at in previous QAs. Basically, what we're looking at here is a revamp of the insurance system. Obviously, as it stands currently, any ship that is Tech 1 to Tech 3 or has Trainer in the name can be respawned using those insurance vouchers and a little bit of ISK. what they're talking about as a revamped insurance system, again, at the time of writing with the information we have, is that essentially you can use Plex, a small amount of Plex, to insure a ship, and when that ship is destroyed, you get an amount of, I think it's either ISK, equal to the value of the ship and its components at the point it was destroyed, or you get the ship and some of its modules back. We haven't actually been given confirmed information yet as to which way around that will work, but it means that you can start insuring some of those much more expensive ships, and the developers can start to do away with that whole, you know, having the, you know, contacting the bug team and getting a ship restored that way, which I'm all for. Yes, I know it's Plex. Hopefully this might drop the price of Plex a bit, as more people are suddenly, you know, buying it with in-game money and with real-world money and that kind of thing. Who knows? Who knows? I think it's an important change to the insurance system to get that off the ground and working. And certainly once we hit March 2021, that insurance system apparently gets another update here. It's the second one down, insurance version 2. We have very little information on exactly how that will work, but as I said, the idea is that you can insure ships that are higher than Tech Level 3 using Plex or whatever. I'm hoping you can use some of those vouchers as well. It would get, I'm sitting on probably about 300 of those vouchers at the moment, with nothing to do with them ultimately. And so it'd be nice if you could use those to get a discount to your insurance, or I don't know, maybe we'll learn more about that as it comes. But note that the insurance system is getting updated. Also in March 2021, new Tech 10 ships. Now that's interesting, because I'm not actually sure any of us will be hitting Tech 10 by time March 2021 arrives. I know we're still a few weeks off Tech 9 for those of us who have like Cog 3 and have been Combo Omega since the start. Tech 9 is still a few weeks off. Tech 10 is still a couple of months beyond that. I actually had it picked, I think, at June, July, that I was going to hit Tech 10. But then again, we have had an awful lot of things like daily login rewards, maintenance rewards, and that kind of thing, and skill points. So who knows, we might hit Tech 10 by March. And it doesn't say what type of ships these might be. Now obviously it's nice and easy to suggest, oh well, Tech 10, that's going to be more battleships. Not necessarily. There are already Tech 10 ships on things like destroyers and frigates, and I would hope that perhaps we might even see some of the new variants there. There are some frigates in the game that are not available currently. For example, things like the Republic Fleet Firetail, the Comet, the Hookbill, and the Slicer. These are basic faction frigates, and when I say faction frigates, I mean the 4 main empires. Those are not currently available in EVE Echoes. They are in EVE Online. Those would be an excellent addition to the Tech 10 frigate branch. Certainly we could even look at things like a Rifter Assault or the Tristan Assault, that kind of thing. We may even have the opportunity to look at things like higher spec Talwars, Dragoons, the other destroyers that stopped at Tech Level 6. There's a lot of different variety that we can have on there, even things like the Tech 3 destroyers like the Svipal, or some of the Tech 2 cruisers. There's a lot of ships that are still missing from EVE Online that could be, and I'm very excited to see what those could be, and I'd love to know what you're hoping for in the description, in the comment section below. Compressed ore. This I'm taking to assume, because compressed ore already exists in the game, means we get the ability to actually compress ore ourselves, which is very useful for transporting it. You get a whole ton of tritanium and then you just turn it into compressed tritanium, which means you can, you know, carry it a lot easier because it takes up less cargo space. Now, interestingly enough, I just want to make an aside here as well. There's a lot of rumours going around about things like intumescent belts and that kind of thing. I've seen a couple of videos pop up here on YouTube of people thinking they've got that system understood. Now, at this point in time, I cannot say too much. I've been sworn to secrecy. But there is ultimately very little correct information going around about those belts, and I will get a video about that as soon as I'm able to. Very exciting information about compressed ore and things already currently in the game, and I'm looking forward to being able to talk about those. Interesting though to see here that you will be able to compress your ore yourself. Obviously nice, and means that something like a Mammoth is going to be able to carry even more ore around. So if you're a Mammoth pilot, beware. Once this comes out, yes, you're going to have an even bigger target on your back, because people know you're probably carrying a ton of compressed ore now as well, which is just makes a Mammoth an even more lucrative target. Fourth then, on March 2021, Interstellar Delivery. This is interesting, because Interstellar Delivery obviously already exists in the game. I assume that means that they are then extending it. There was talk about the corporation citadels being included within that you can actually request stuff to be delivered to a corporation citadel, or even that there would be corporation ITCs set up. That is what I take that to possibly mean. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Can you imagine that you're a little alliance wherever you're based currently, whether it's up in sort of, you know, like, I was about to say Venal, you can't be in Venal because that's already sovereignty of the Ghostless Pirates, but you could be up at somewhere like Geminut or Cash or whatever, and flying around, and there is actually now an ITC run by a particular alliance. To me, that would be really awesome, and I'd love to see that actually actioned and put in there. Obviously, there is the downside that if it's in corporation space, you're going to need to be bloody careful as you fly in there, because you're going into non-sovereign space. But, again, it does mean that if you're part of that alliance, well, heck, you get yourself a nice little ITC out in the middle of nowhere, and it helps haulers by giving them another reason to actually go between high-sec and null-sec. Anyway, speaking of haulers, in April 2021, we look to get capital ships in the form of freighters. Now, I'm going to put an image on screen now, if I don't forget, showcasing the Minmatar Fenrir, the Galente Obelisk, the Caldari Charon, and the Amar Providence. These are the 4 freighters in EVE Online, capital ship freighters. These have a massive cargo hold. Like, seriously, if you thought the Mammoth or any of those were pretty big ships, these are humongous. They're also incredibly slow and heavy moving. They have no high slots, no mid slots, and no rigs, and they only have a limited number of low slots in EVE Online. They are very lucrative targets. Obviously, if you destroy one of these, you know it's got a cargo hold full of juicy goodies. If you're moving from low sec into high sec with one of these things, it tends to have an entire military fleet supporting it, and if you're, they tend to mainly be seen moving goods from one ITC to another ITC through high sec. It's rare that you'll spot one of these in null sec because of how much of a massive target they have painted on their back, but I'll be interested to see if anyone does start doing hauling runs from null sec into high sec with a completely loaded out ship. Obviously, again, that will require a full fleet around it, but that's more PvP, and I am all for that. Now, interestingly enough as well, as has been mentioned by a couple of other people, Sovereign mentioned it in his video on this as well, obviously things like the Tyra, the Mammoth and the Kyros and all that kind of thing, these have special cargo holds, like the Mammoth has an ore cargo hold. Now, there is a certain amount of hope that the 4 freighters don't have specialised cargo holds, or if that they do, that the main cargo hold is made much more massive as well. Because obviously you see that there are a lot of certain ones of these. You don't often see a bestower. You do not often see a bestower in EVE Echoes, because its cargo hold, its special cargo hold, just isn't that special. It's, you know, not that useful. Whereas here, if we had ships with humongous main cargo holds, but also sizable secondary holds, that could work, but it needs to have the humongous main cargo hold, and maybe change some of the stats on the ships themselves. Like, some of them are more maneuverable, this one's got bigger shields, that one's got better armour, that kind of thing. Gives you a little bit of choice as to which one of those ships you might choose to fly. They're cool looking ships, and it's interesting to see that the first capital ships are going to be freighters. But, okay, there we go, that's that. You know, it means that capital ships are on their way. Also in April, we have the Easter event, The Hunt. I loved how Sovereign described this, flying around hunting for eggs in space. The first thing I thought was, hang on, aren't those just planets? But I think that'd be a really cool event. Ultimately, having like an Easter egg hunt through space could be pretty cool. I think it'd be interesting that, having had the Christmas event done with encounters, having had the Halloween event done with anomalies, not sure how, of course, the Guardian's Gala Valentine's Day event's going to go. Perhaps having something that isn't so combat related with the hunt could be really, really cool. I don't know how they'll do that, but it could be really cool actually chasing around looking for individual items and cargo containers hidden in space, rather than just straight up combat, because it means those industrialists can actually get involved too. But hey, let me know what you think of that one. Finally then, in April, Encounter. Now this, that is probably the most vague note you could ever have in a video or on a roadmap here. Encounter. That's all it says. Does that mean new encounters being added to the game? That would certainly be cool, going up to additional storyline encounters at the end of those. But again, ultimately, encounters are very similar to each other. There's not much difference between whether you do sort of like Ducia Foundry under attack or, you know, any of the others. It's basically just fly in and kill the ship. So I'm hoping this is a revamp of the encounters, that we may have other ones added in here. Now in EVE Online, you get some really interesting encounters, where it may be a case of you go into an anomaly and there are just way too many ships there to handle. The idea is to do a gauntlet run, grab an item out of a cache at the end, and then make it out to safety. Stuff like that could be a really interesting addition into EVE Echoes, and break up the monotony of just doing the same thing of, you know, jump into anomaly, kill everything, kill the next wave, kill the third wave, jump to next one, and so on and so forth. I'd like to see a little bit of variety there added to the encounters, and I'm hoping that's what that means in April 2021. Beyond this, into May 2021 then, we get a balance update. Now this is, I'm glad to see that these aren't as frequent as they are in certain other games. We had one in October, November, it looks like the next one's going to be in May, so that is literally a 6-month cycle there, it's a half-year cycle. That's really cool. That's when all the big changes start happening. When we start looking at things like whether or not missiles are doing enough damage, whether railguns need more range, whether destroyers need an additional high slot each from Tech 4 upwards. That kind of thing. There's a lot of talk about what could be in a balance update when the developers add it. Obviously, May 2021 is still a fair distance off. There's a lot of stuff we can request to the developers in you know, like on the EVE Echoes community Discord. Again, be nice and polite. The polite stuff is the stuff that gets responded to and actually dealt with. If you're rude and aggressive, all you're going to do is get yourself blocked. Be polite. Developers are working hard. It does no one any favours for you to be swearing and getting angry at people. Anyway, so balance update could be very exciting, and at the same time this looks like it's going to be a big month for other updates. Scanning and exploration, industry decoder, and rig upgrade. Now this is pretty cool. As far as I'm aware, actually, I'm just thinking on this now, I could be completely wrong, but has anyone seen the Tech 4 rig blueprints yet? Like, I know we've got Tech 3 versions, but I've never seen a Tech 4 cannon collision accelerator blueprint or whatever. We know they're in the game, they're on the market files, etc. Maybe scanning and exploration is how we're going to find these. And as for industry decoder, I think that's... it's hard to tell, because again, that's really vague, but that could be a reward that helps with reverse engineering, that could be something that helps you reprocess more, could be something that reduces the amount of materials required to build ships, that kind of thing. I don't know. That's an interesting little point, but scanning and exploration in EVE Online is a complete industry path on its own. Essentially, you take something like a probe or a heron or a magnet, you fly out into space, and you can launch scanning probes, and it's kind of this little cool mini-game that you can use to try and find additional sites. You find things like wormholes, you find things like ruins, and all that kind of thing, and special combat anomalies as well. Essentially, you align those different scanners and you sort of hone in on a particular point. You'll start to get anomalous readings on those probes. You then sort of increase the intensity and sharpness and bring those probes in closer till eventually you actually find out what that particular site is. And it could be a powerful combat site. So like when you open up your overview, of course, you get your standard cosmic anomalies. It might be something like a powerful combat site that doesn't show up in those standard scans. It may be something like an asteroid belt that is much more lucrative than the others that are showing up in the standard overview that only you now know about because you're the one who's scanned it. Things like ruins and that as well. There is like a little mini hacking game where you can go in and actually decode and decrypt all these cool little algorithms and sort of loot different blueprints and that from these different sites there. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. Certainly, for one, that would mean things like the Heron and certain other ships actually get a bit more use and have a bit more variety, and there are certain skills in the game. Oh, my screen's gone off, there we are. There are certain skills in the game that actually, if you can head to exploration in the skills tab at the moment and it's just a load of stuff missing, it's an empty screen. That would mean we start getting those. It's a really fun little part of gameplay in EVE Online. I thoroughly enjoyed doing that, and it would also insinuate that's when the Sisters of Eve ships would start to come too, because those are heavily based on scanning and exploration. So might we see things like the Astero, the Nestor, and the Stratios in May 2021? I certainly hope so. I think that would be an awesome time to release them. I'd love to see scanning and exploration added. It's a big part of EVE Online for me personally. I know a lot of other people like it. I constantly get asked in my comment section, is exploration in the game yet? And it looks like that could be May 2021. Along with this, corporation structures. Again, this could be things like the corporation ITCs we spoke about before. It could even be, the developers mentioned there was the possibility of adding your own gate guns in nullsec that would be managed by a particular corporation, whoever controlled that sovereignty area. So imagine you're in a big fleet battle in someone's sovereign space. You then decide you're going to warp to the gate for safety, only to be blapped by the turret guns, or you try and escape from harassing their miners, only to be blapped by turret guns that they've got set up. To me, that's really cool, and I'm liking the fact that we're getting more sovereignty, more corporation-based structures. Be excited to see exactly what those are. As for holographic reconstruction, your guess is as good as mine on this one. This literally means nothing to me. Holographic reconstruction, I've googled this, I've looked at it with EVE Online, I've spoken to a couple of friends who play EVE Online as to what it may be, and everyone has been drawing a blank on this. The only thoughts that any of us have had is that this could be somehow related to rebuilding ships, or it could be things like a fitting panel, which would be really, really cool, like a fitting tool in the game that you can open up and you can dry fit stuff and get an idea for what it would actually be. Take it out into a little, like a test fight, so to speak. So you get your brand new ship, you decide, okay, I'm going to put these modules on it, let's see how that works, and you fly it out into a simulated combat encounter that even if you get blown up, the ship is still there because it's completely holographic. That would be my best bet here, and if that is what's coming, that is absolutely goddamn amazing. Can you imagine that? I get shouted at for, oh, it's so unfair that content creators have access to Fulmination. It gives them such a massive advantage. Yes, being able to just test fit ships, that's literally the only advantage we have over live. And quite frankly, I still find that people tell me that my Fulmination fits are absolute cack and that theirs are better, even on ships that don't exist. So apparently it's not that much of a helping hand. So the ability to actually load up a ship, fit it with the different modules you like, and test it out in a combat scenario before even actually, properly undocking it would be amazing. That would be incredible. June 2021, the Quaif Carnival. Interestingly, again, there's very little information on this around anywhere at all. This is not something that's in EVE Online. I'm assuming this is like a midsummer event, like we've had the Easter event, we had the Halloween event, we had the Christmas event, that kind of thing. This could be a midsummer event, celebrating the whole time when, I don't know, when the Quaif organisation stopped a war between the Amar and the Galente. Maybe something like that? I don't know. Could be interesting. I think that's probably some kind of event, but it's telling that it doesn't mention it as an event. Like here in April, it's Easter event. It's V-Day event for February. It doesn't say event here on the Quaif Carnival. But I have to imagine that because it's got Carnival in the title, that it is some kind of event. I'm thinking kind of Dark Moon Fair. That could be pretty cool. A lot of interesting little sort of sub-games on the side there. That would be awesome. Secondarily, Dead Space. Now there are two different things I think this one could mean. Sovereign seems to allude that this could be wormholes, and certainly, as we look through the rest of this Trello board, there's no mention of wormholes, and he is quite right. The developers did mention that that would be middle of 2021 that we could be seeing wormholes. Certainly, we're getting scanning and exploration in May, so it could be just subtext that wormholes are included there. Or it could be a sort of an error in translation, that Dead Space here refers to wormholes instead. That's a possibility. I personally believe that this could be the time when we start seeing the B-type and the A-type loot coming into effect here. Now, ultimately, if you've seen, like, obviously every Dead Space out there, whether it's an Angel Dead Space, it drops the Gisty C-type, or Gistum C-type, or Gist C-type, there may be additional Dead Spaces that drop the B-type or the A-type. The developers did allude to the fact that you could trade in C-type loot for B-type, and then you could trade in B-type loot for A-type. They're just better versions of the same thing. So, like, an A-type autocannon is better than a B-type autocannon is better than a C-type autocannon. Currently, C-type gear is the highest level gear you can find in anything meta level wise. There are certain modules that don't have C-type gear. I'm looking at you, energy neutralizers, Nosferatus, that kind of thing. So it'd be interesting to see what this means. It could be new types of Dead Space anomalies that could be B-type gear, it could be A-type gear, it could be all kinds of different things there. It could even, as Sovereign suggests, just be wormholes. I'm hoping that wormholes come in May with the rest of scanning and exploration, but if they come in June, that's only a month later, I'm happy with that too. Then August 2021, things really start kicking off, and my goodness, I screamed with delight when I read through this. Not for the capital ships, that stuff can sod off, I'm not a big fan of capitals, but that's just a personal opinion. What made me scream with excitement was seeing arena mode and adding LP arena and secret stores. Now, I'm hoping that what they're alluding to here is essentially faction warfare complexes. In EVE Online, faction warfare complexes are these kind of little arenas floating in space. They come in novice, small, medium, and large. And basically what that means is what type of ship can enter. A large combat plex can, large plex as they're referred to, can take any type of ship. You can jump in there with a battleship, you can jump in there with a frigate. Mediums can only take anything up to cruiser and battle cruiser. Smalls take anything up to and including destroyers. Novice only take frigates. These are one of my favourite things in EVE Online. It's why I became a frigate pilot. You jump into those novice combat encounters with whatever frigate you're in, and you know it is going to be frigate on frigate encounters, because even destroyers cannot enter a novice plex. That gives this really cool scenario, and it's not necessarily a straight one-on-one. There are times when I've jumped into something, I've taken a firetail, and I've jumped into a novice combat arena, only to be only to come up against like 3 Garmas or something like that. It happens. It's what type of ship can fit in, not how many. You'll find that you can gang up, you can do one-on-ones. It's a great little way. You can scan into them and actually kind of get an idea of who's in them first as well. I love it. For me, as a solo PvPer, this would be one of the most exciting additions to the game. An LP arena, LP is loyalty points. Basically, when you do encounters and missions for individual factions in EVE Online, you start gaining loyalty points for them. That means if, for example, you're doing missions for the Minmatar, you start to gain Minmatar LP. You can then use that to buy Minmatar blueprints and other special things, including modules. This, to me, is where, if you remember back in the open beta and the final test, there were some special modules that have a purple colour to them. Things like Tobias's or Cormac's autocannons, that kind of thing. I think that's where the LP here may come in. You can exchange LP for some very high power modules. It may also be how we get blueprints for certain very powerful ships. It'd be a nice way to just change a small amount of LP for something like a Firetail blueprint or a Hookbill blueprint, that kind of thing. That would be really cool, but I'm just excited for the fact that we get a PvP arena in August. And that's alongside an anniversary event as well, because obviously in August 8th, 2021, EVE Echoes turns 1 year old, and there is going to be a massive celebration event for that, I imagine. Certainly, again, no details, just anniversary event. I imagine there's going to be a lot of like daily login rewards, a lot of really cool stuff going on there. We also get the complete beginner experience. So they're hoping that 1 year out, the complete beginner experience will be finalised. So that's things like the advanced tutorials, how to actually learn to fly a ship, all that kind of thing, helping new players get into the game. That's one big point here I want to draw your attention to. 1 year after the game launched, they are putting notes in the roadmap that the beginner experience is still important to them. That means they are intending to keep beginners coming into this game for a long time to come. This is a game that NetEase thoroughly intend to keep supporting. That is really heartening to hear, because we are, what, August, September, October, November, December, January, we're 5 months into the game, nearly 6 months into the game now. If a game's not doing well, that's about the time when developers start to wonder, is this actually lucrative for us, and start shutting things down. Instead of shutting down, we're getting a load of new stuff added, plus the concept of making sure that new players joining are getting the best experience possible. That is a really positive thing to see, and I'm super stoked about that. Less super stoked, but I know a lot of you might be excited, so don't let me ruin your excitement. Capital ships coming in August 2021. Now, we already saw that freighters were added in April 2021, but it looks like in August we start to get dreadnoughts, possibly carriers, and even force auxiliaries. We'll start to see things like, well, certainly dreadnoughts here, we start to see things like the equipment for them, and the capital ships being, the skills being added to the game, all that kind of thing. So that'll be things, everything from capital skill manufacturing, capital skill engineering, and of course capital modules as well, because you don't just put large modules onto a dreadnought, you can put bigger stuff on. So just to give a quick idea of what these actually are, it explicitly here mentions dreadnoughts. Dreadnoughts are kind of like the Striker battleships, but on a bigger scale. They have what's called a siege module. They are the only type of ship in EVE Online that can fit a siege module, and when you activate that siege module, it massively increases your DPS, but makes you a sitting duck in space. You literally anchor yourself in space to become incredible DPS. I think the only thing higher than a Dreadnought in DPS is a super carrier, a super capital, and Titans, which, if you know anything about Titans, you know that they take months to build, but they only take minutes to destroy if you're a particular guy who hasn't logged out properly. Lol. Check out what I'm talking about there. You can find information on that one online. That's a very famous EVE story, and my goodness, I don't know what I would do if that was me. But Dreadnoughts, so you've got the Naglfar for Minmatar, the Merez for the Galente, the Caldari Phoenix, which you've actually seen in the opening of EVE Echoes. If you're watching the video when the game loads up, there's a Caldari ship that's sort of a weird blocky long thing. That's the Phoenix, and then of course the Amar Revelation. Now, carriers, they're not mentioned here, but if we're looking at capital ships, I don't see why they wouldn't necessarily be added. Carriers basically use fighters, which are frigate-sized drones. Basically, you're looking at the biggest drone ships in EVE when you look at carriers. They also can store assembled ships, which means in a fleet PvP engagement, if your ship is destroyed, you can actually dock your capsule up at another player's carrier, undock a ship, and get straight back in the fight. In certain cases, you can actually dock up in a carrier nowadays and heal up ships as well, which is pretty sweet. All kinds of things there that adds to the game. Finally, then there are force auxiliaries, which are kind of they're kind of the logistics dreadnoughts is what I'm trying to say here. They're logistics dreadnoughts. Rather than having the siege module, they have a triage module, which does exactly what the siege module does, but for healing. Rather than massive DPS, it's massive heals, but you sacrifice all your mobility instead. And that is the Minmatar Lif, the Amar Apostle, the Caldari Minakawa, and the Galente Ninazu. I can never pronounce that one. Ninazu, I think. And those are some really cool capital ships. I personally don't like capital ships because, as Sovereign mentions in his video as well, it comes down to this sinusoidal field. Basically, a sinusoidal field is a field that it's like a storm, an electric storm in space that ships can drop. And then other ships can just sort of select that point and jump straight to it. It means that, again, if you've got someone doing a little solo roam, someone can just drop a sino field and bam, you've got a load of these capital ships suddenly on grid. It means that centralized alliance space becomes an absolute nightmare to have combat in. If you come into our alliance space, for example, and you're just 2 or 3 systems in, chances are you can get away with causing some damage. But if you're trying to get straight into our heartland, there's going to be a whole ton of dreadnoughts and capital ships hanging around that can just jump in on any point at a moment's notice. Dreadnoughts also have what are called jump drives. Essentially, you can use warp gates anywhere between in low-sec and null-sec with dreadnoughts, but you cannot enter high-sec with them. That's one of the big points here about capital ships. They are not allowed in Empire space. But you don't have to use jump gates to get between system and system. You can actually use jump drives, which allow you to jump from your system to any other nearby system at a massive expenditure of fuel, usually a big amount of capacitor as well, in order to achieve that jump. Anyway, I'm not going to sit here and talk about capital ships to the end of time. If you're excited about capitals, you know what they are. Essentially, we're talking about ships that are bigger than battleships and are exclusive to low-sec and null-sec. They're not allowed in high-sec because of how big they are. Interesting that they're going to be added. I'm glad it's over a year out and that people will be Tech 10 at that point anyway, because capital ships, as I said, personally really don't excite me. They kind of take away a little bit from the game for me personally, but I understand that a lot of people love these big ships, and certainly so I'm excited on behalf of those players. And who knows, maybe things will be a little bit different in Echoes, that sinusoidal fields might work differently. And maybe I'll still be able to enjoy the fact that I get arenas in August at least. It's still going to be an exciting month for me. So there we are. That is the end of the Trello board as it has been updated. If, like me, you're interested in keeping an eye on this and absolutely terrible at reminding yourself just to check things, you can sign up to Trello and then hit that little star icon at the top left there and you'll get notifications when the board updates, I think. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. I'm terrible with Trello. I've never used it before. I know my wife used to use it with work, and I know some other people have used it as well with work and projects and things. But that's the information there. What excites you most about this? What are you looking forward to most? Do you think I've missed something? Do you think that I'm sort of overly excited about something you think is going to ruin the game? Or is there something you think is missing from this board? Let me know what you think about the holographic reconstruction, what you think the encounter could be, interstellar delivery, and those other vague systems. Perhaps I missed something in a developer Q&A or whatever. Anyway, folks, thank you for watching right the way to the end. I cannot wait to read your thoughts in the comment section down below. Otherwise, happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.